Welcome to APCUG's Wednesday workshops, where we get together in the middle of the week to talk technology. This is October, so it is National Cybersecurity Month. So we are focusing on security presentations. Our next presentation on security is going to be given by an old friend of ours and past presenter, Mark Schulman, and he's going to be talking about encryption software. Because losing a laptop or flash drive might mean you're out of money, but it doesn't have to mean that your private data leaks into the world. We're going to learn how to use encryption software to protect your private data on a PC, laptop, external hard drive, or on a USB flash drive. Mark Schulman is a Central Florida Computer Society member, and we're glad that he survived the storm. He's also an author, speaker, web designer, teacher, software designer, and technology enthusiast. He has designed software and web applications for businesses from small medical practices to big Fortune 500 companies. In addition, Mark speaks on a wide variety of technology issues. He is the author of 7 computer books, including Using Unix, Understanding Unix, and Using Lotus Notes, all published by Q, a division of Macmillan McGraw-Hill. He has taught a wide range of programming classes for major corporations and worked on large software development projects. Mark currently manages the IT department for a small company that does clinical drug trials and computers for a small medical practice. His major geek interest, with all that stuff these days, is the computer technology that made moon landings possible back in the 1960s. He is currently working on building his own reproduction of the Apollo guidance system. So with all of that, Mark, it's great to have you back with us. I'll turn things over and talk to us about encryption.
Great. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I always find it amazing when someone mentions the books. You can't even find them in the bargain bin anymore. So it's been a while. All right, let me see if I can share my, oh, I got to share. There we go. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. All right. We're going to talk about encryption today. A couple things I want to mention. I can't think of much to add to what John already mentioned. My name again is Mark Schulman. I've been doing IT for about 40 years. And the important point I want you to know is that I have no affiliation with any of the products I'm going to describe to you today. Almost everything I'm going to talk about is free. And I'll give you links at the end of the presentation of where you can get all these products if you hear about one that you like. So today we're going to talk about single file encryption. We're going to talk about encrypted containers. We're going to talk about whole disk encryption, and then a few other things. And if you don't know what any of that is yet, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So what is encryption? So encryption is the process of taking information, scrambling it up so that it can't be read by anybody except people you intend it to be read by. And then the idea is that the data gets transformed in some way so that nobody can read it. And then the people that you want to be able to see that data, even if that's just yourself, you can take that data and put it back in a usable form. So everybody here already uses encryption just about every day, even if you're not aware of it. 2 places that just about everybody uses it. Anytime you pull up a web page in your browser and you see the little lock that's circled there, indicates that you're using a protocol called HTTPS, which means that your web pages are encrypted in both directions. So if somebody were to intercept your web pages, they wouldn't be able to see what's on them, which is important if you're doing banking or something like that. The other place we commonly use it every day is in Wi-Fi. Almost everybody's Wi-Fi connections these days are encrypted so that if somebody's sitting outside your house with a laptop, they can't read your information that's going wirelessly between your laptop and your router if they don't know your encryption key. So we've got a lot of information that we want to keep private, and we could list lots of different things here, but just some examples of reasons you might want to use encryption beyond what we just discussed. You don't want your roommate snooping through your PC when you're not home. So you might want to keep private information on your PC encrypted. Or you've got a flash drive that has passwords for your social media accounts, and you want to be able to carry that flash drive with you. But if you lose it, and I'll tell you a story behind that shortly, you don't want other people to be able to just pop that flash drive in their computer and be able to read all the passwords for your social media accounts. And another reason you might want to use it, you want to email personal information to your tax accountant, and you don't want to worry that if your email is encrypted, that somebody's going to intercept that information. Now, one of the things that most people don't realize is how vulnerable email is to being intercepted. So, except in certain circumstances, most of us, when we use email, we're just counting on fate that our email doesn't get intercepted by somebody and that information used. So encryption's a way to ensure that that doesn't happen. So we're going to talk about all of these examples and how you might handle them. So the first thing we're going to talk about is single file encryption. So the idea behind single file encryption is that we have a single file we want to encrypt so that nobody can read it but us or people that we designate. So you might use this anytime you have a single file that you want to keep, and you're going to carry it around on a flash drive or on your laptop, and you want to make sure that if somebody gets a hold of your flash drive or laptop, they can't read this file. Or if you wanted to email a file to somebody, you could share the password with them and they'd be able to read the file, but nobody else in between. So again, some examples: you have a flash drive that contains a list of lock combinations at work, and you want to be able to carry that flash drive with you, but you're worried that you might lose it. Also, you want to, let's say, email tax returns to your accountant, and you want to be sure those are protected. Now, the bit about you losing a flash drive is not hypothetical. About 2 months ago, I got a phone call from somebody from a number I didn't recognize, and I almost didn't answer it. But I did answer the phone call, and it was a woman, and she said, "I found your flash drive in the Walmart parking lot." And a lot of my flash drives, I put a little sticker on them that says "if found," and then it's got my cell phone number. And this very nice person had found it and done exactly that. And she said, "I'll turn it into the lost and found at Walmart, and you can go pick it up." And she did, and I did. I went and retrieved it from Walmart. But as I was thinking about it, I thought, you know what? There's a lot of information on that flash drive that I would not want people to get at. And in particular, there was some patient information from the medical office that I work in. Now, it wasn't particularly sensitive, but it was just names. And just having people's names get out there if you work in a medical office can really be a problem. So it really convinced me that I needed to be a lot more diligent about encrypting all of my information. So there's lots of ways you can do single file encryption. Microsoft Office has it built in. I'll show you that in a second. There's all kinds of software that's out there for free. I use 7-Zip a lot to do encryption. And I also use a program called AES Crypt. AES stands for Advanced Encryption System, and it's a US government standard. And that's what this software uses to encrypt files. So let me show you what that might look like, and I'll show you how to easily encrypt some files. So I've got some files stored to use for a demo. Let me find them. Sorry, I should have had this positioned ahead of time. There it is. Okay, so I've got a Word document called Northwest Traders Business Plan, and I don't want people to be able to get to it. And it's on a flash drive, let's say. And if someone were to get that flash drive and they had Microsoft Word installed, they could just double click it, and up comes this business plan that I don't want people to be able to read. Well, it turns out that later versions of Microsoft Office which includes, I think, everything since 2013, but it may go back even farther than that. All I need to do is, when I've got the document open, go to File and Info and Protect Document and Encrypt with Password. And it prompts me for a password. So I'm just going to make up a password. And then it prompts for it again, just to make sure that I entered it correctly. And the document is now protected. So I'm going to save it. I think I have to do that. And I'll get out of here. And now if I open that same document, watch what happens. It prompts me for a password. And if I know the password, I can just enter it. And up comes the document as always. And now every time I access that document, it's going to prompt me for the password. I can send it to somebody and I can give them the password, and it's completely safe in between. There's no way to figure out the contents of this document, no reliable way anyway, if I don't know the password. So that's a great way to encrypt a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. Excel will do the same thing. Okay, I'll also show you a program that I like to use. It's called AES-Crypt. And the nice thing about AES-Crypt is that it will work on any kind of file. So what I just showed you with that Word document only works in Microsoft Office, but this will work on any file. So here, I've got an Excel document, and I could encrypt it in Excel, but I'm not going to do that. And if I want to encrypt it, all I have to do, I have AES-Crypt installed on my computer. That's the important step. So I installed it before I started the presentation. I can now right-click on that file, and you see that in the menu comes up an entry, AES-Encrypt. And I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to type a password twice. And notice that I now have a copy of the file where it has stuck a .aes extension on it. And if I look at the contents of that file, let me just open it in a text editor. If I look at the contents of that file, it's complete gibberish. So I could email that to somebody and it would be completely safe. I could put it on a flash drive. It would be completely safe. I'm going to delete the original here just so you can see what's happening here. Now, so I've got that encrypted file. Let's say I'm an accountant and I receive this file from one of my clients. Now, I have to have the software on my computer as well, AES-Crypt. And if I right-click on this file, now I've got something that says AES-Decrypt. And if I click on that, it prompts me for the password, have to enter the same password, and I get a new copy of the file that no longer has the AES extension on it. And if I double click on it, it opens it just fine. So I love both of those methods for encrypting a file. Okay. So a couple of warnings about these techniques. Be careful not to give away too much in the file name. So for example, here I've got a Word document called Job Search To-Do List, and perhaps it's encrypted so I can safely keep it on my computer at work without worrying about my boss being able to look at it. Except as soon as my boss sees that I've got a file called Job Search To-Do List, he's going to immediately realize that I must be looking for another job. So be careful about the names that you put on these files, even if they're encrypted. Using Microsoft Office to encrypt the file doesn't hide the name in any way. And so if the file is named something like Invasion Plans, then somebody's still going to realize what you're up to. If you're sending the file to somebody, you have the concern about, for them to be able to read it, I have to tell them what the password is. And believe it or not, a common mistake people make is that the same way they send the file, they also send the password. So look at this email. I've actually seen people do this. Dear Pete, the list of phone numbers is attached. The file is encrypted. The password is "call me soon!" exclamation mark. Well, if somebody intercepts this email, there's the password right there. So the obvious answer is to send the file, send the email, but then say, I will send you the password via text message, or I'll call you and give you the password, or call me and I'll give you the password. Don't put the password wherever you're putting the encrypted file if you really want to keep it secret. Okay. Next topic, let's talk about encrypted containers. I use these all the time, and especially these have gotten more and more used after I had that incident with the Walmart parking lot and the flash drive. I've really gotten to be a fanatic about this. So what an encrypted container allows you to do is to easily store lots of files in an encrypted format and to get at them very easily. So potential uses, you have lots of files you want to be able to store in an encrypted format on a flash drive or a hard drive. You want to be able to get to them easily, but you don't want to have to worry about somebody else being able to get to them. So what an encrypted container is it's an area of your hard drive that you set aside to store encrypted files in, and the computer is going to automatically encrypt files as it puts it in the container, and it's going to automatically decrypt files as you access them. And I'll show you exactly how that's used. The software that I really love for this is called VeraCrypt. VeraCrypt is based on a much older program called TrueCrypt. It's open source software. It's actually undergone security audits. So we have a pretty good belief that it's safe and secure. It's free, it's easy to use, and it's available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And as far as I know, all versions of these, all recent versions of these. So here's how it works. If you want to create a container, you use the VeraCrypt software to create a container. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So you say, I want to set aside 100 megabytes or a gigabyte or 100 gigabytes or however much space you want, and it creates an encrypted container of that size. Anytime you want to access those files, you mount the container. And mounting it, and again, I'll show you how to do that, involves entering the password. And if you don't know the password, you won't be able to do that. Once you have the container mounted, it looks just like it's a regular flash drive or hard drive on your system. You can access the files just as you normally would, using any software you normally would. And the system will automatically encrypt files as you save them to the container, and it will decrypt files as you access them. It's really cool. So let me show you an example of how this works. All right, so I've got VeraCrypt installed, and it's a free download. And again, I'll tell you how to use it, or I'm sorry, how to get it shortly. So I have a flash drive plugged into my computer, and it's my G drive, and it's right here. It's already got a couple directories on it. That's fine. I'm not going to worry about encrypting those, but I want to create an encrypted container of 1 gigabyte that I can store files in up to a gigabyte and be able to know that those are going to be secure. So I'm going to go to my start menu, and there's VeraCrypt. So I am going to create a volume, and I can accept almost all the defaults, so I'm not going to explain all these options. And it asks me, where would you like to put it? And I'm going to say, well, I'd like to put it on my G drive, and I want to call it my secure stuff. And then it again asks more stuff, just accept the defaults. And then it says, how big would you like it to be? Well, I'm going to say 1 gigabyte. And there's no limit to how big it can be. And what password would you like to use? I'm going to use a really simple password, which is not what you ought to do. And it's actually going to warn me that that's a pretty short password, and I'm going to say I want to do it anyway. And then it says, what file system would you like? And it recommends one. I'll stick with FAT, that's fine. And then it wants you to just move the mouse around until that line turns green. And what it's doing is generating random numbers based on your mouse movement. So just move the mouse around and eventually the line goes green and you click format. So this is going to take just a minute. Now, it's not taking very long because a gigabyte is not very large. If you do this, let's say, on an external hard drive that's got a terabyte on it, this can take some time. And I'll exit out of that. Now, if I go look at my flash drive now, you can see that it created a file called My Secure Stuff, and it's a gigabyte in size. So that was a one-time thing. The file is now created, and now I can use it. So how do I use it? Well, I go back into VeraCrypt, and I pick a drive letter, can be anything I want. I'll use J, and I select that file. So I go to my G drive and select the file, and then I click Mount. And it says, okay, what's the password? And I type in the same password that I used when I created it. And it chugs for a second. Chug, chug, chug. And now if I look in Windows Explorer, I've got a J drive. It's empty, but I can put some files in it. So let me open up another Windows Explorer. And I've got some files to stick in it right here. So I've got two directories called insurance and taxes, and they've got some documents in it. And I'm just going to take all of that and just drag it over here, just like I would copy to any flash drive or external drive. And it copies it, and there it is. And I can use them just like they were. And it opens it just, takes it a second. And it opens it just like it would a normal PDF. So I can now browse around on that J drive. I can just access it like I normally would, but everything I put in there actually got encrypted behind my back. And if I go into VeraCrypt and now I select that drive and say dismount, my J drive is gone. You can see there's no longer a J drive. The only thing that's left on my flash drive is just that My Secure Stuff, and it's completely encrypted. Nobody can ever get to it. And this stuff really is, by the way, very bulletproof. There is no known method to get at this stuff. And by the way, there's a warning there. If you forget the password to open this vault, to mount this vault, you will never see that data again. So it's really important that you use a password you can remember, or you write it down someplace securely, because lose that password and you are sunk as far as that data goes. Okay, so let me give you a real live case of where we use this. And I actually use this every day in my job at work. So we store patient medical records on the computers at work. And of course, we back it up we back up all our data every night. And I hope you also do backups. If not, I have a presentation on that. One of the things that we are concerned about, and that any company should be concerned about, is if there were ever a fire or a flood. We do live in Florida. If there were ever a flood at work, our backup drives could get destroyed and we could lose everything. We could lose our computers and our backup drive. So every night, what happens is one of the doctors takes the latest backup drive home with him and keeps it at home. And then the next morning, he'll bring that one back in and take another one home with him. So we always have at least one backup that's at the home of one of the doctors. And if there's flooding, if there's some sort of natural disaster, the doctor understands that he has to protect that hard drive, or we could lose all of our medical records. Well, one of the things we're obviously worried about is, what if he's in a car crash and that drive gets put in a position where someone could grab it? Or what if he just loses it? Or what if his house gets broken into and somebody steals it? We want to make absolutely certain that nobody can get at those medical records. There are severe penalties for losing people's medical records. So on all of our backups, we've created a VeriCrypt container that is the size of the entire hard drive. They're 2 terabyte drives. So we've created a 2 terabyte container on each drive. And before we do the backup every night, we mount that container, we enter the password, all the data gets backed up onto that hard drive, and then the next morning it gets dismounted and the doctor can take it home with him, secure that everything on that drive is encrypted. And if the drive gets lost, we've got to replace the drive, but none of our data is going to get lost. None of our data is going to get revealed. There are a lot of other very cool features in VeriCrypt. There's something called a traveler flash drive, where it actually installs the VeriCrypt software on the flash drive. So if you want to access it on a computer that doesn't have VeriCrypt installed on it, it's on your it's on your flash drive, and VeriCrypt will just use that automatically without even installing it on the computer where you're trying to access your data. There are things called key files and hidden containers, which give you additional security in various ways. I got a whole presentation on VeriCrypt, so if you want to learn what some of those are, maybe we can do that for a workshop someday. Some other alternatives for similar type of solutions, they sell hard drives that are, flash drives that are actually encrypted. And here's an example of one. It's called the Data Traveler, and it's made by P&G, I think. I forgot. No, Kingston, made by Kingston. And what happens is when you put this flash drive in a computer, you have to enter a key, a random number in the in that little keypad on the side of the flash drive. And if you don't know the proper sequence of numbers, you won't be able to get at the data on that flash drive. Now, the problem is these guys are pretty pricey. It's an interesting solution. It's certainly very convenient, but for a 8 gigabyte flash drive, it's $74 at a time when about $4 would be the price for an 8 gigabyte regular flash drive. So to my mind, I'm not going to buy this when I can download VeriCrypt. I can buy a $4 or $5 flash drive and I get just as much security. There are, and actually, I know Kingston is a reputable manufacturer, but in some cases, I don't trust devices like this because in some cases, they actually use the code to prevent people from getting to it on a computer, but you can actually disassemble, if you know what you're doing, if you're an electrical engineer, you can disassemble these guys, get the memory chips out of it, and be able to get to the data. Now, I don't expect anybody's going to do that with my data, but if you really want to be secure, I want to know that it's a reputable manufacturer. And with VeriCrypt, I've got no doubts that something like that is impossible. Also, some flash drives will come with encryption software produced by the manufacturer or typically produced by some third party that the manufacturer put on their flash drives. I do not trust that software. So I want some software that I've heard of. I know the company that made it, and that's why I like VeriCrypt. I know about that company and I trust them. The last thing I want to talk about as far as computers goes is what's called whole drive encryption. And what this does is it encrypts the entire contents of your hard drive. It makes it so that nothing on your hard drive is accessible without a password. And let me tell you another quick story. There's a subway not far from us. This is not a picture of that specific subway, but it's very similar. It was set up very much like this. And I had gone to meet a friend for dinner. And I had my laptop with me because I was coming from work and I didn't want my laptop to sit in the hot Florida sun. So I took it with me and I put it on the bench beside me. We had a lovely dinner together. And when I was done, we were still engrossed in conversation. And I walked away and left my laptop sitting on a table that was set up just like this. There was all kinds of foot traffic that went by, and it was hours before I realized what I'd done. And I thought, there's no way that laptop is still there. Got in my car, drove 20 minutes to get back to the subway, and amazingly, my laptop was right where I'd left it. Nobody had touched it. I cannot believe my good luck, my great karma when that happened. But it really got me thinking. The data that I care about is encrypted on my laptop, but just being able to boot up Windows on my laptop was pretty dangerous because Windows keeps copies of files that you don't know about, keeps all kinds of data, keeps lists of the most recent files you've accessed. Windows has got a lot of information about you, and I really don't want somebody even being able to boot up my laptop into Windows. So that's where whole drive encryption comes in. And again, my favorite program for this is VeraCrypt. So VeraCrypt has a feature that will encrypt your entire hard drive. So when I boot my laptop now, what happens is I get a screen that looks like this. Right when the Dell logo comes up in the upper left-hand corner, it prompts me for a password. If I don't know the password, I'm not getting any further. If somebody takes the hard drive out of this computer and tries to access it on another machine, they'll find that the contents of that drive are encrypted, and without the password, there's no way for them to be able to get to it. So in this case, I know that everything on my laptop is completely safe. And if I lose my laptop, I'm going to be out $1,000 or so, but at least I don't have to worry about anybody getting at anything that was on the laptop. So how safe is the encryption? It is uncrackable by any known technology. Now, who knows, 30 or 40 years from now, that may change. But right now, nobody, including CIA, NSA, Russian security service, nobody knows how to crack this stuff as far as we know. The key, of course, is to use a good password. You notice that when I created the container, VeraCrypt warned me that I was picking too short of a password for its liking. So pick a nice long password, 20 characters if you can. Pick a whole phrase from a book that you have memorized or something like that. Use a long password. Otherwise, there's the possibility somebody may guess it. And finally, don't lose your password. If you lose your password, you will never get at the data. Now, in the case of my laptop, that wouldn't be a great tragedy. I would just reformat the whole hard drive, reinstall Windows, and restore my data from a backup. But if you've got an encrypted container that contains information, and that's the only place that it resides, don't lose your password. And you still need to back it up like anything else. Just because my laptop is safe if it gets stolen and I don't have to worry about somebody getting the data, that doesn't mean I don't need a backup of the data. So be sure you still practice good backups. Now there's a competing product from Microsoft called BitLocker, and it's built into some versions of Windows. And it does essentially the same thing as far as whole disk encryption that VeraCrypt does. So if you have it, it's nice, but I still like VeraCrypt better. Here's a comparison. BitLocker is from Microsoft, whereas VeraCrypt was written by a company called Idrix. VeraCrypt is available for any version of Windows, for Mac, for Linux, just about any computer you're going to be able to get VeraCrypt for it. BitLocker is only available for Windows Pro or Windows Enterprise. It is not available for Windows Home. So if you've got the home version of Windows, you're out of luck. But on the plus side, BitLocker is pre-installed on those versions of Windows. So all you have to do is turn it on. And a lot of manufacturers such as Dell, if you buy a Pro or Enterprise version of Windows on your laptop, they will turn it on for you. So you don't have to do anything. VeraCrypt is open source, so people can actually look through the code, see how it works, and confirm that it is safe and secure, whereas BitLocker's proprietary Microsoft code, nobody can look through it except Microsoft people. One of the big advantages of BitLocker is that if you work for a large company and that company wants everybody to be using BitLocker, then there are actually management features that they can use to make sure everybody uses long enough passwords and so on. Whereas there's no such thing for VeraCrypt. It's just a computer by computer piece of software. So the last topic I want to talk about is phones. So we keep a lot of important information on our phones. And if you stop and think about how much of your life could be revealed if somebody gets at your phone, encryption can be really important. I don't know about you guys, but I have lost phones before. And I want to know that if somebody finds my phone, my entire life is not going to be exposed to them. So it turns out that all modern cell phones can do what we would call whole phone encryption. That is, they can encrypt everything stored on the phone. So I have Android, but I know iOS, Apple has the same feature. In my phone, I can get into the settings, and there's a setting called Encrypt Phone. I have it turned on, and that ensures that everything on my phone is encrypted. And without entering my PIN, nobody can get at it. Now, the problem is the encryption is only as good as your password. So if you picked 1234 as your PIN or 1111 as your PIN, then encrypting the phone doesn't do you a lot of good, because anybody that finds it is going to be able to guess that. So definitely for your PIN, use random numbers. The longer, the better. I don't know what the maximum is on Android, but if you can use 6 or 8 digits, that would be best. Now, the problem, of course, is that security and convenience are always at loggerheads with each other. For convenience sake, I want to enter as few digits as possible, but for security's sake, I want it to be necessary to enter as many digits as possible. Another alternative, if you can't be bothered to use a really good PIN, there are lots of apps on Android and iOS that allow you to store data in an encrypted format. And one that I used to use a lot, which I really like, and it's free, is called ColorNote. And it's just a general note-taking app. You can just store any information in it. But if you look here, you can see the second thing on the list, business plan, has a little lock next to it. And what that indicates is that that entry is encrypted. So when I created that chunk of text, I told ColorNote that I wanted to be able to enter a password. It let me enter a password. And now without that password, I can't get to this. So even though I only have a 4-digit PIN on my phone itself, and so it's possible somebody could guess that and get to the data on my phone, when they get into ColorNote and try to get to my business plan, they would not be able to access that because I have a very good password on that note. So that allows you to keep really sensitive information on your phone and know that you're in no danger of losing it. Another way to do this, and this is what I actually use today, is Microsoft OneNote, which is actually free from Microsoft. Even if you don't have Microsoft Office, OneNote is available for free. And one of the features they recently added on phones to OneNote was the ability in a section of notes to encrypt it. So you do this not on a note by note basis, but on a section basis. So I have a section called secure. I've got a really good password on it. And when I go into OneNote and I try to access anything in that section, I have to know the password or I won't be able to get into it. And I love OneNote, and that's one of the many reasons why. So where do you get all this stuff? Well, here they are. Here's AES-Crypt, ColorNote, OneNote, and VeraCrypt. They're all available for free, and there are the locations to get them. And you can take a screenshot of this, as I think Judy had suggested, but I'll also make the slides available to anybody that wants them, so this slide will be part of it. And that's all I have. I hope that was interesting. I hope you learned something. And if anybody's got any questions, I would be delighted to take them.
Well, thank you, because I've just have a few new things to add to my presentation on free and open source software. I'll ask the one question before Judy does. Is the AES crypt cross-platform like VeraCrypt?
Oh gosh, I don't know. That is a great question. I need to look that up before the next time I do this presentation. I'm not sure. If somebody wants to go to aescrypt.com and check that out real quickly, they can perhaps chime in with the answer in just a minute or two.
I could have done that, but I thought maybe you'd know right away.
Well, I feel really embarrassed that I didn't know that.
Okay, we'll throw it back over to Judy to check with any specific question just for you before we open things up.
Okay. When when receiving a document or web page site from another source, not a page that I originally went to, can the encryption symbol be faked and then my data compromised?
So you're talking about you receive a link and then you want to click on that link and go to that website, and can the website fake the link? Is that what you're asking?
Looks like that to me.
Yeah, no, so well, yeah, actually, probably yes, is the answer. So they can't fake the fact that it's encrypted, but if it's a website that like if you go to Bank of America's website and it says it's encrypted, then it's safe. And you pretty much do not have to worry about that. If you're going to a website that you don't know about, and especially, when we see fudged URLs that are meant to make you think they're genuine, but if you look closely, you can see that they're not. For example, someone sends you a link and it's to www.paypal.com/scammer.ru. Well, everybody sees the www.paypal.com at the beginning, and they don't see that there's more before the first slash, and you're actually going to some Russian scammer site. So I think that's really the place that you can get in trouble. If you click on the link, if you click on the padlock in the browser, it will tell you who's vouching for the encryption on this website. And after a while, you learn the companies like VeriSign that you can trust for the encryption. If you see that the person or the organization that's vouching for the encryption is the security organization, the Security Department of North Korea, then you probably should be a little concerned about the encryption that they're using. Does that help?
Yes, it does. And AES is cross-platform.
Oh, good. I thought it was, but good to know. Okay, thanks for letting me know that.
And they specifically said Intel and whatever other Mac version there is.
Okay, good.
Okay, can the password for encrypted documents be saved on a password manager?
Oh yeah, I do that all the time. Yeah, on my password manager. So if I've got, I've got some personal encrypted containers where I keep personal information. I've got several at work, and of course the passwords on those are different, and I lose track of which is which. So in my password manager, I'll list them and I have the password for them. And I just go into my password manager, I click on the password, it copies it onto the clipboard. Then I go into VeraCrypt, click mount, it prompts me for the password, and I just hit a Control V for paste, and there we go.
Great.
So yes, absolutely.
If you lose the password for VeraCrypt and can't ever get into the file, can that file be deleted from the external hard drive?
Oh, yes. It is just a file like any other file, even though VeraCrypt knows to treat it as an encrypted container, and that's how it gets used. As far as Windows is concerned, it's just a 1 GB data file. You can delete it like any other file. And there's a good caveat, by the way. These things are really easy to delete. So yes, be very careful that you don't accidentally say, wow, what's that 5 GB file there? I can't remember what that is. And the next thing you know, you've deleted one of your encrypted containers, or you realize that weeks later that you deleted one of your encrypted containers. So yes, and formatting the drive will cause it to disappear, any way you can delete a file, yes, you can delete an encrypted container.
Thank you for another excellent presentation that was absolutely totally clear, like our first one, and understandable, with lots of great information. I hope people take advantage of what they've learned with both presentations. John, do you want to open it up for Q&A?
In 1 minute, I want to first thank Mark Schulman for sharing with us and making this another excellent workshop. And then that way, those who are going to watch this video later that are for a meeting, you can end it now.
Very good. And don't forget to use reactions, raise hand when you want to ask a question. Over to you, Jay. Please unmute yourself.
There we go. How about now?
Good to go.
Okay, great. Hey, yes, you're right. Both great presentations, well covered. I wanted to add a couple things. I do use Scamicide, and it's scamicide.com. It's a daily email that you get. Steve has run this for 2 or 3 years, and you get the latest up-to-date what type of scams or the form of scams that are going on. A lot of people might want to know, well, what does a scam sound like? Well, there's a lot of people around the country, around the world, are actually called scam baiters. 2 of the more popular ones is, and you can see them on YouTube, so it's safe, Jim Browning, and also Mark Rober, and another person is Carl Rock. These guys are known nationally, and you see stories about them. They are able to go into these scammers' boiler rooms. They get into their computers. They destroy computers. They destroy networks. So evidently, and they do have people on the inside, so we know where the scammers are. We know who they are. It's just that some of the law enforcement are basically, they're receiving money, so they don't do that. But if you watch and go to YouTube, they will tell you the most current scams that are available and how they run and how they operate. But that's all I want to say. Great presentations.
What is Steve's last name?
I think it's Weinstein.
Okay, I just thought it might be Steve
Okay.
Gibson. Gabe,
No.
over to you.
Hi, thank you. This both very good presentations. I wanted to add one suggestion to the first presentation. This was triggered by the mention that if a computer is too old, it's worth replacing it. Same thing is true for your router. Routers age and eventually they fall out of maintenance and you can't get firmware updates. And also they probably won't have the newest security protocols and Wi-Fi protocols. And so every once in a while, it's worth looking at your router and seeing how old it is, seeing if it's still receiving updates from the manufacturer and probably replacing it. Some other comments on routers. Make sure that you have turned off access to the router from the internet. There's almost never a reason that a civilian would want to reach their router from outside their home from the network. And so turning that off prevents other people from getting in from the outside. And there are lots of other things you can do in router configurations to make them secure. That's certainly one of the most important.
Maybe it's time for Mr. James' router presentation again with all kinds of updated information. Yes, I'm talking to you. You need to change your mattress according to the mattress people every 8 years. So Bill, how often should we get new routers?
I've always maintained probably every a router that's 5 years old or is time to replace it. I wouldn't keep one more than 5 years.
Oops.
Oops is right. So don't forget your mattress. Don't forget your router. Kim, over to you.
Hi, this is primarily for Mark's presentation. I realize we're not talking about password managers per se, but we are talking about encryption things. One of the things that I found out from my perusing in various cybersecurity realms is that even if you have your phone encrypted, if you unlock your phone and you're using it at that particular point in time when you're moving stuff around, what happens is it's in an unencrypted form. Okay. I use a password manager on my iPhone and my iPads called OneSafe Plus. And the reason that I do that is as the application goes in and out of background, it will lock and unlock an AES encrypted file. So if you happen to have, if you got spammed or you had something that ended up on your iPhone, iPad, the programs it would not be able to grab a file that's in the clear. What that means is that you can take that file and you can save it pretty much anywhere and it's encrypted. Okay, it's only when you open up the OneSafe application that it unencrypts the file when you're looking at it. And it provides both a pattern kind of lock, provides pin type locks, and you can also enter in, multiple different types of passphrases, as well as it also provides within itself a secondary level of encryption. So even if you found out the pattern to get into it on my phone, there's still another layer that you have to go through to get to the bottom part of that. It's called OneSafe. Okay. Unfortunately, it's only for the Apple ecosystem. Okay. That's the difference. So you gave an example with an Android type of password manager. This one is specifically for iPhone.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
And regarding the Nigerian scam, we used to receive that at our PO box back in the day, and like it was noted from about 20 years ago. And by golly, the first email I got, it was the exact same words that came to our post office box that, of course, they found on the Computer Club's website. But I just really had to chuckle about that. Over time, the words changed and it got more, in the here and now. But I thought, what a hoot that they just, took that, and it looked like it was typed on a typewriter. It was that kind of font from back in the day. Jack, your turn. Unmute, please. Left-hand corner. Jack, you need to unmute.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
Yeah, short question. Mark's final slide was with his contact information was on for just about 1 second.
You will be receiving the presentation.
Okay, I just wanted the contact information. Thank you.
Joel.
Sorry about that.
There was remark there about BitLocker being nice because it came with Windows. I just wanted to give a cautionary note about that. I got a new Windows laptop that came with Windows 10 that, of course, supported an upgrade to Windows 11. And I thought, well, that BitLocker thing's not an interesting thing, so I turned it on. Well, there was instructions on upgrading to Windows 11 that you want to be sure and suspend it. That's not sufficient. You got to completely turn it off, because otherwise on my laptop, it left out some critical files that made Windows non-functional when it went to Windows 11. I stumbled around and finally got it up enough that I was able to back it back out to Windows 10, but you have to completely turn that off on my laptop. And then the other thing that I found that got me, I use dual booting. I set up my laptop for Linux, and I waited until I had Windows stable before I tried that, because installing Windows, it kind of wants to take over the hardware. Well, after I got Linux on, I went back to Windows and turned BitLocker on. it turns out that Linux updates, if it affects the boot, probably, looks like somebody trying to play with your laptop. And BitLocker is much more than just an encryption file. It also detects whether it thinks somebody's been trying to hack your hardware. So I got ready to do a presentation and found I had to supply the 64-character password to get to my hard drive in Windows. And fortunately, I had enough time to do that. And the other thing you want to be sure is to know where Windows stores that under your Windows logon so that you can find it when you're pushed for time like that. So if you're doing dual booting, or if you're upgrading from 10 to 11, you probably don't want to use BitLocker. And then another interesting, if you're primarily a Linux person, Linux has some really nice features for not just having encrypted containers, but to have an encrypted directory. And that has some very interesting attributes, the way that it does it. I've actually got an encrypted directory under Dropbox. And it encrypts all the file names, it encrypts the directory names, and encrypts the actual file data itself. And when I want to actually use that, I basically tell the Linux file system to mount this as an unencrypted form on a directory on my local drive. So I've got a unencrypted access to it that looks like a local file directory, but it's really stashed under Dropbox. And the advantage of having it on the directory level is that you don't have to dedicate 1 gig or 5 gig or 10 gig to it and then try to change that when you need to increase the size of your container. It just dynamically uses file space like any other directory. So that's an interesting approach, but I don't know if there's an easily equivalent of that under Windows. You might have to end up using part of the Linux or the Unix support that's under Windows to make that work, perhaps.
Cool, thank you. AARP's Fraud Watch, that was mentioned in our first presentation. I highly recommend everybody subscribe to that. They send emails, not every day. You're not going to get inundated with things. But they're very pertinent and up to date. And again, it's all written in plain English, just like our presentation was. There was no text speak in there that we didn't understand. I love presentations like that. But it is a good, really good source of information about the latest and greatest scams that are going on, unfortunately. Do we have any more questions? Andy from Brookdale.
Okay, hi. Just a couple of quick comments. 2 great presentations. Presentation number 1, old hardware. Well, I'm sitting here, my eyes are rolling because 2 of the machines that I'm by are both over 15 years old. But instead of trashing them, I went over to this thing called Linux. And I have no security problems. So they might not support XP or Windows 7, but I get updates all the time on my Linux boxes. Second thing, one of the things that I've done with 2 different major national banks, well, both over in this corner of the woods, PNC and Bank of America, the alerts. Take advantage of the alerts. I love PNC alert system. I can use my credit card, and before I get to the door, I'm getting a text on my phone that a charge was made. Bank of America, on the other hand, over 6 or 7 years, I've sent off at least a half dozen emails because their security alert, their lowest alert on some of the features that they have is $100 minimum. Oh. And that came to mind. That was brought to my attention because I got home on a Monday night when I was working, and I got a call from the bank. It wasn't Bank of America, it was PNC. You have your credit, did you give your credit card out? 20 questions. No. It had been used for 3 or 4 cash withdrawals and 6 account balance inquiries. that I never knew anything about because I didn't have the alert set up at the time. I was made whole. It didn't cost me a dime, but somebody's paying the money. Somebody got money from my account that the bank replaced. They don't seem all that concerned about it, but I heartily endorse making sure the alerts are set to let you know what's going on. Third thing on the first presentation, as far as the fakes, the chat is turned off, but there is a great site for up at, I think MIT put it out. I would have put the URL in the chat box. You could take a brief browsing test yourself to see deep fakes. They are phenomenal. I failed the test. 10 items or something they showed you, and I missed half of them at least. You know, is this real? Is it fake? It's the site is called Detect Fake.
Please send it to me, put it in the chat box to me, and I'll include it in the follow-up email.
I went to put something in the chat. It was locked.
John will open it back up again for you.
Okay. Yeah, I will. I'll put it up there. It's great. I did terribly, which was a good thing.
That's an excellent thing to do at one of your meetings.
Yeah.
And see how everybody does after you've shown presentation number 1.
Cool. Question for Mark. Mark, have you had any experience with, there are 2 older packages that I've used for years and years. One is called Steganos Locknote, and the other is F-Secret. It's basically like an encrypted notepad, but it's a single file. It's dirt simple to use, encrypted, open source. But I was, back in the days when people were making their ways through working with TrueCrypt and getting confused with that, the Steganos Locknote was great. Just wondering if you had any experience, any comments. Thanks again for both of you.
Steganos I've heard of. The other one is not familiar to me. If it meets your needs, as long as it's using one of the modern encryption methods, like AES or Twofish or something like that, then that's wonderful.
And again, from presentation number 1, if you guys, many of you will remember Ira Wilsker. And during his security presentation, he would mention that he was in line at Home Depot and buying something. And the kids said, "Would you like a Home Depot account?" And before he could get no out of his mouth, his phone wiggled, and it was Home Depot. A notice that his credit bureau sent him. Home Depot had already put it in a request for his credit card for him. He was a sheriff out of Beaumont, Texas, who was in charge of all their tech crimes and things like that. So those alerts that you put on your credit bureau files work for sure. Any other questions? We're here for questions.
Well, I'll thank Andy for mentioning Linux, so I didn't have to.
I know, I was going to say some unknown person mentioned that in the chat box. Any questions? I don't see how there could be that many because they were both so thorough.
Yeah. And I did need to make a comment. Most of everybody knows me as Free John. And so with the programs that Mark especially shared with us, there's no reason for you not to try it out because it's not going to cost you anything. And you might find that it's going to benefit you. And as Uwe said, you've got to do those backups. And, we have another whole month. I don't remember which month it is, whether it's March or April.
March,
that is, National Backup Month. So we'll be having workshops on that. But the whole idea that you've got to understand what backup really is, just not having a file one place backed up, isn't doing it, and it doesn't back up your whole computer. So lots of good information today to think about and give it a try. I definitely am.
We will be having our annual World Backup Day presentation on March 29. That's as closest as I can get to the 31st. A couple of years ago, we actually had it on the 31st. That was way cool, because that is World Backup Day, when you're supposed to, if you're not doing it, you're supposed to get your act together and start doing it. So mark it on your calendar. I have that day booked already. No presentations yet, but I know who I'm going to ask. Any other questions? Any other comments? I know we all enjoyed and learned so much from both presentations. We appreciate them taking the time. They are both on the East Coast, so they have had breakfast, and they might even have had lunch. I'm waiting for breakfast. John, take us away, please.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today on another Wednesday. We will be back next week with a Linux workshop. We're continuing our learning Linux through the eyes of a Windows user. And in 2 weeks, we will have part 2 of our security month, and we'll have 2 more excellent presentations, and you'll all want to be back. We will have follow-up material for those people whose names we can match up in the registration. And I'd like to thank co-host Bill James, Judy, for doing all the questions, and especially our 2 presenters that did an excellent job. And I'm sure that you guys will get calls from local groups who, rather than have show your video, will want you to do it live. Anytime you have ideas, and people who are here about topics for workshops, we always are open for those. We are always open for somebody who says, I'll do something. And we aren't expecting you to do a 2-hour one. You can do a half-hour one, and we'll get some other people to do half-hour ones. But if you got something that you know about that you would like to share with others, our whole slogan is we are members helping members, and we are member groups helping member groups. So thanks for your attendance, and we'll see you at the next workshop. Back up, Judy.
Ha ha, I already did.
Andy, probably see you later tonight.
You're going to the Linux SIG.
Sure. Okay, guess that's about it. See everybody later.